Friends, so I've got a pretty compelling case here for what Yeshua, Jesus the Christ, actually looked like. And all this information, this new information that's come out about the Shroud of Turin is absolutely mind-boggling stuff. Mind-boggling stuff. So for those of you who haven't seen this, I want to show you kind of what it is first. We'll talk about the Shroud quick. Then I want to talk about what we think Jesus might actually look like, and then why. So we've got 2 eyewitness accounts, plus we're going to do I'm going to show you a digital overlay of what we believe Yeshua, the Christ, to have looked like. I'm going to show an overlay with that, a fading overlay with the image on the shroud. So the Shroud of Turin, a shroud is just a linen cloth that usually very wealthy people were buried in. This was obviously given to Jesus by one of his followers. This is in, let's see, it is in Matthew somewhere. If you want to find it in the Bible, there it is. Gospel of Matthew 27, 59, and 60 details the event where Joseph of Arimathea provided his tomb and his linen for the burial of Jesus. Okay, so we know that. But what do we know about this shroud? Okay, we know a few things. This is the most studied artifact in the history of mankind. Both Christians, non-Christians, physicists, all kinds of people have done their dissertations on this thing. They've studied the absolute heck out of it. Now, in 1988, there was a carbon dating done on one small piece of the shroud, which dated it to the 13 or 1400s. It is now believed that that was either done intentionally or they really did a stupid thing by just doing one small sample, and carbon dating isn't that reliable in this situation. But the most recent study that was done, the new findings, okay, are using an X-ray dating. Now, the X-ray dating is more reliable, and it has it right at 2,000 years old, which is exactly how old it should be according to this. So this is from Italy's Institute of Crystallography, the National Research Council. They applied this technique called wide-angle X-ray scattering to date the shroud. This method analyzes the natural aging of flax cellulose, okay, because this is a garment that's made out of linen. Converting into a timeline from the fabric's manufacturer, the team examined 8 small samples. So that's right away, okay, they examined 8 small samples, not one like they did in 1988, 8 different places to confirm, using the X-rays to reveal intricate details of the linen structure and the breakdown of the cellulose in the linen over time. So cellulose, a component of plant cell walls, degrades at a measurable rate, providing insights into the age of the material. By assessing this degradation, the researchers estimated that the shroud was kept at a temperature of about 72.5 degrees Fahrenheit with 55% relative humidity for approximately 13 centuries before arriving in Europe. This analysis aligns with the shroud's origin with the 1st century AD, further supporting its authenticity. Whoa. Now, a couple of things that we should know about the shroud. And by the way, to validate their findings, the researchers compared the shroud's cellulose degradation with that of other linens discovered in Israel dating back to the 1st century. So they compared it with other shrouds that they knew were from that time, and they found the data profiles were consistent with the linen samples dated between 55 and 74 AD, such as those found at Masada, Israel, Herod's ancient fortress overlooking the Dead Sea. Okay. Conversely, when the shroud's degradation was compared with linens from medieval period, so the original time frame in 1988 that it was assumed that this was created in, no similarities were found. So the study concluded that to align the 1988 carbon dating results with the new findings, the shroud would have to have been preserved at a crazy high temperature and all these different things that are just extremely unlikely. So they screwed up in 88, or they intentionally did this. We're not sure, but a couple of things that we know. So now the dating is right, because for a long time, the shroud itself has been very believable. Now what we look here is we see Jesus' front here, and this is the back here. What do we notice? These little highlighted white spots right here. Let's see how much this will allow me to zoom in. These white spots are blood. Okay, they show up as blood on these negative images. And so you can see there's blood up here on his head from the crown of thorns, right? Big blood spot right here where his hand was nailed into the cross, covering up the one on the other hand right there. And then you can see on the feet, better on the back side here, you can see there's a lot of blood on the feet area as well, as his feet were nailed. Also on the backside, you can see all the lashings, these blood marks here from all the lashings that he took on his back. They beat him mercilessly. If you haven't seen the Passion of the Christ, you want to see an idea of what it may have looked like, I recommend you do watch it, as brutal as it is. So all of these things are consistent now with what we've known for a long time. How did we get this image, though? That's the question. How did we get this image? Because this image didn't really surface until the late 1800s. What happened was a photographer took a picture of this and he looked at the negative and could see this image in the negative. However, every person who's ever studied this, the one thing they all agree on is that they have no idea how this image exists on this shroud. They've reviewed many, many, many shrouds, hundreds, thousands of shrouds. None of them have this image on it. How did it get there? They can't figure it out. They also cannot recreate it. They don't know what it is that caused this image to exist. One thing that they do know, though, these spots where there is blood, the imaging is not there, showing you that the blood was there first and then the image. So what is it that we can conclude from this? Well, my opinion is very clear here. Now, I have logicked my way to Jesus many times over through all sorts of different things, coming to an understanding of the resurrection and the likelihood of the resurrection just based on the lives that the apostles lived, how they died for this. They would not have died so brutally for a lie. Paul, the apostle, completely transformed his life. He was super successful in the Jewish religion and was moving his way up to be the high priest at some point. He was doing extremely well for himself, had everything he could possibly want, and he does a 180, becomes a Christ follower, and spends the rest of his life in prison because he encountered the risen Jesus. So there's a lot of reasons that we have to believe the resurrection just based on using logic. But this is the first piece of physical evidence that I would say is lock, stock, and barrel, no doubt about it. This image must have been created due to the resurrection. There's no other explanation. What other explanation is there? None of these scientists, none of the smartest people, none of the thousands of people who've reviewed this in great detail can tell us how it got there. How is this image even here? They don't know. They can't recreate it. They can't. It's not paint. It's not burned. It's not anything that we understand. So what is the most likely result here? And I know it's hard to say, well, the most likely outcome is that a resurrection took place. It's hard to believe that. But we're talking about the one person we've been told was resurrected for all these years. And now we have evidence that I would say is as good as it could possibly be. I mean, what else could be? This is essentially a photo. People wanted a photo. They wanted to see a photo of Jesus resurrected. They wanted to see a video of it. Here's your photo. God actually gave us a photo. Okay. And all this science and all this technology, no one can explain it. So that's a big step for some people. But look at this. Go down the deep dive. Watch the podcasts. Watch all the scientists. There's some great videos on the shroud. Great videos. And I'll show you a couple links to some here in a second. But these findings now reinforce the timing. The dating of this is right back to the correct period. All the things are in line with what we've been told, what are recorded in the Gospels with regard to the shroud. And we also have this sort of this magical image that's here that no one can explain how it got there. There's no explanation. That sounds like God to me. I don't know what else you could possibly want. So this is a great link to look at this too. Now, I'm trying to figure out what does Jesus look like. Okay, so we're looking at the shroud, and what's happening is, we got this AI created this Jared Leto Jesus here from the shroud. And maybe it's not too far off, but I think one thing that's interesting is when you look at this image it's not necessarily a perfect outline. It's two-dimensional. It's not a perfect outline of someone's face. And if you had a cloth on you, when you took that cloth off, it might look a little bit different, right? So what we want to do here is look at, okay, well, what might this actually be? And for many years, I have believed that this is the face of Jesus. And I have a couple of different reasons why I believe that. two particular reasons. Number one, we are at the gallery for Akiane Krameric, who is the little girl who painted this Prince of Peace when she was 8 years old. Akiane, when she was about 4, she disappeared, vanished. Whole town was looking for her. All of a sudden, boom, she reappears right in the middle of the search party. No one could understand how they missed her or how she got there, but she claimed that she had gone and she had met this man. And her parents weren't religious, and no one really understood what she was talking about. And she was telling the story, and a paramedic or a worker overheard her and said, "Hey, you're talking about Jesus." And so that was when she was 4. When she was 8, she painted this. And in her gallery here, if you go into her gallery, you can go through and go all the way down to the bottom. You can see she started recording her paintings when she was 4 years old. And you can watch her growing in her abilities up until the time that she encounters this man who was a carpenter, by the way, who inspired her to paint a Prince of Peace. So she is an eyewitness to having met this man that she claims, I met this man in a place that seemed like heaven. She didn't know what heaven was at the time, but now she does. She understands it. And so that's one eyewitness account. That alone is not enough for me. But this one really got me. If you haven't seen this book, Heaven is for Real was made into a major motion picture, made into a movie. This little boy here, Colton Burpo, he died legally at the age of 5 because of a ruptured appendix. And his parents didn't know what was wrong with him. They just knew he was sick. It was winter storms. They were trying to take him around from hospital to hospital. No one could tell him what was wrong with him. The boy dies, goes to heaven, comes back, and then recounts his story of being in heaven with Jesus. His dad is a pastor. So his dad is very curious, asking him lots of questions. And one of the questions he consistently asks him is, what does he look like? Well, for years, this goes on where his dad shows him, is this him? Is this him? Is this him? Every time I find a different picture that he hasn't seen yet or evaluated yet of Jesus, he asks him, is this it? And he said, no, that's not right. That's not right. That's not right. For years, he said, this little kid says, no, that's not it, Dad. Then one day, a guy told Todd Burpo, Colton's dad, hey, you should check out this little girl. She also disappeared at a young age, and she painted a picture of Jesus. See if that's the one. It's in the book. You can read this in the book. They actually have a picture of the Prince of Peace in the book. And what happens when Todd shows Colton this picture? Colton froze, and he couldn't speak. And Todd had to basically shake his son and say, hey, what's going on? And he said, Daddy, that's him. Okay, now for years, this little boy looked at images of Jesus and said, that's not him. That's not quite right. That's not quite right. That's not quite right. So now we have 2 eyewitnesses. We have Akiane herself, who painted this, and we have this little boy, Colton, who said, that's the one. And this one looks different than any other picture we've ever seen of Jesus. So for Colton to recognize this one, after having not recognized hundreds and hundreds of ones that his dad had showed him, that tells us something. Now, okay. Those 2 eyewitness accounts for me are good enough because they're unrelated. Akiane and Colton are completely unrelated, different parts of the world, did not have any communication with one another, and they both pointed the same guy out. Okay? Now, I want you to show you something. We talked about the shroud. The shroud is real. The Shroud of Turin is real. It was the burial cloth of Yeshua, the Messiah, the Nazarene, the Christ. It's what he was buried in. Now, I want to show you something here. Now, this particular overlay, and Akiane is the one who posted this. This is a comparison, okay? We're looking at the shroud. So there's a negative of the shroud, all right? And you can see here the white areas, right? That's where the crown of thorns was. That's where there's blood, all right? And here's the image, the negative image. Let's see what happens when we overlay that with the Prince of Peace. Look at this. I mean, is that exact or what? I'm going to play it for you one more time. Is that exact? Tell me this isn't him. Look at this. Watch the eyes. Look at the nose. Look at the mouth structure. You can just see the cloth that was laid on this man, our Messiah. That's it right there. This is what he looks like. And I believe that this rendering here only proves it even more. The shroud is real. It's accurate. Akine's painting is real and accurate. That's the man right there that we've all been looking for. That's what he looks like as a man. Right there. Crazy. Highly recommend you do your own research. This guy right here, just look up Shroud of Turin. But this guy right here, John Campbell, he does an incredible deep dive into the forensic aspects of this. I mean, they did a very, very detailed job. They were able to find fragments of pollen in the linens of the shroud and trace those back. I mean, it's really, really insane. Crazy stuff. It's all out there now. Highly recommend everyone look into this. If you're interested in the truth, if you're searching for truth, if you want to know the truth, if the truth matters to you, check this